Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. This is a Survivor's Guide to Life. My name is Jessica Lang, and this channel is all things related to trauma, the brain, and healing. So if that's your jam, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. While you're in the mood, jump over to Instagram, follow me there on Instagram, continue the conversation about trauma, the brain, other mental health topics, self-care, self-esteem, self-empowerment, etc. So go ahead, go to Instagram, follow me over on Instagram, trying to also get to that magical 10,000 likes so I can get the swipe up feature and just make everything really nice and neat and connected. Shameless plug over, and now let's jump into today's topic. So this is Unpacking the DSM PTSD edition, where I dive deep into post-traumatic stress disorder, what each category means for you, things that you can do if you're struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. Today's video, I'm focusing on category B, which is all about intrusions. Intrusions include such things such as flashbacks, nightmares, or just any type of distressing thoughts or recollections. Or in the case of nightmares, they have specific themes that are typically have some reminder or connection to your past trauma without specifically or overtly being about a traumatic memory, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to dive in real quick and read category B of post-traumatic stress disorder in the DSM-5, which is the current edition of the DSM when I'm recording this in 2019. Presence of one or more of the following intrusion symptoms associated with a traumatic event or events beginning after the traumatic events occurred. Number 1, recurrent, involuntary, and intrusive distressing memories of the traumatic event or events. In children older than 6 years, repetitive play may occur in which themes or aspects of the traumatic events are expressed. Number 2, recurrent distressing dreams in which the content and or affect of the dream are related to the traumatic event. So that's your nightmares. In children there may be frightening dreams without recognizable content. Number 3, dissociative reactions. Example, flashbacks, in which the individual feels or acts as if the traumatic event or events were recurring. Such reactions may occur on a continuum, with the most extreme expression being a complete loss of awareness of the present surroundings. In children, traumatic specific reenactment may occur in play. Intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event. I'll go a little bit more into that later. Number 5, marked physiological reactions to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event or event. For post-traumatic stress disorder for children 6 years and under, this is what they say specifically about that category B that I just read, so the piece about intrusions. Presence of one or more of the following intrusion symptoms associated with the traumatic events beginning after the traumatic events or events have occurred. Recurrent, involuntary, and intrusive distressing memories of the traumatic event. Note, spontaneous and intrusive memories may not necessarily appear distressing and may be expressed as play reenactment. Number 2, recurrent distressing dreams in which the content and or affect of the dream are related to the traumatic events. Note, it may not be possible to ascertain that the frightening content is related to the traumatic event. Number 3, dissociative reactions or flashbacks in which the child feels or acts as if the traumatic events were reoccurring. Such reactions may occur on a continuum, with the most extreme expression being a complete loss of awareness of present surroundings. Such trauma-specific reenactment may occur in play. Number 4, intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event. 5, marked physiological reactions to reminders of the traumatic event. So for number 4 and number 5, it's the same in both. I just want to talk about, this is that brain stuff I have been discussing throughout these videos that I'm doing, right? This is that limbic system. This is the stress response system that's kicking in, right? I showed you the arousal chart as well, the different brain states where you're either calm, you're alert, you're in alarm, you're in fear, you're in terror. And so with these intense psychological distress that they're describing in number 4 and 5, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about that arousal state. They're talking about when a trigger occurs, the body feeling as if this trauma is happening again, and that you're reliving it. So it starts to shut down that cortex piece and starts to engage in fight, flight, freeze mode to optimize survival. And just the thought of this can can send people into a spiral, can act like, even if it's like just the thought of having of shutting down, or the thought of, or a memory can send the body into the trauma reaction. So one of the things that people always want to know is why do I have these intrusions, and then also how can I stop them. So one of the things that you have to keep in mind when it comes to traumatic events is that the stress response system gets kicked in, right? And what often happens, especially with repeated traumas, is you go up, you have the stressor, and when you're coming back down, something else happens and you go back up again. So the stress response system never actually gets a chance to complete its cycle because it's interrupted by something else. Often when we have distressing thoughts, distressing dreams, distressing feelings, what we try to do is get rid of them, right? Because we don't like the way they make us feel. They make us feel bad, they're upsetting, etc. So we stop them. And by putting on that stop, you're actually not allowing yourself to actually go through the natural movements, the natural cycle of things, what your body needs to process and to heal. Because you're stopping the natural mechanisms from working, the trauma gets stored and trapped in your body, and it can play out later in life with chronic health conditions like fibromyalgia or like chronic fatigue syndrome, because it's like you're firing, the neurons are firing constantly, and rather than like letting them have the natural repair, you're like stopping them in their process. It's intrusions specifically related to nightmares is that one of the things we've realized about sleep and why sleep is so crucial is because what happens throughout your day, all this information is coming in constantly and it gets stored in your short-term memory. And when you're sleeping, that stuff that happens throughout your day that's in that short-term memory, like brain filters through it, goes through everything, and it starts moving things into long-term memory. But if you're having disrupted sleep, whether it's because you're anxious about going to sleep, you're anxious about nightmares, or just having generalized anxiety related to your PTSD, so your mind is constantly going, so it's hard for you to fall asleep, or you're having restless sleep, so you wake up repeatedly through the night, maybe you have some depression, and so depression disrupts your sleep cycle. Whatever the reason is, if your sleep is disrupted, you'll start to notice some issues with cognition and memory, because that information is not being properly processed and stored. One of the big keys that I read, especially in the children's section, because oftentimes trauma happens, especially like complex traumas and PTSD, like a lot of this stuff happens during childhood. Kids, they don't have an understanding like adults do, because again, brain development, they don't have the prefrontal cortex, is not developed in the same, it's not fully developed. They don't have an opportunity to really process and understand what's going on. They just kind of, it's like trauma happens and something else happens, and they never get like a resolution around it. And so one of the ways that they try to find some resolution, they try to complete the action, is through like reenactments, and that's just repetitive play revolving around the same theme. So they're like trying to make meaning and make sense of what's going on in their environment, and with the trauma as well. So nightmares are like a natural extension of trying to make meaning and trying to process what happened. It's your brain's way of trying to figure out what was going on, trying to complete that action. But again, because nightmares are so distressing and they can feel like they're actually happening, you wake up in a terror, panicked, right? And you end up kind of stopping that process. So again, like your body, your brain, it's trying to find ways to release that trapped tension, that trauma, that energy, but we put the stopgap on it because of the way we feel. Here are 3 recommendations that I have for you if this is something that you're struggling with. If you're struggling with any type of intrusions, specifically nightmares. One of the things that I did was I wrote a blog about 5 ways you can eliminate nightmares if you're struggling with PTSD. So I'm going to link that in the description box, so you can take a look at that. But one of the things that the article mostly focuses on is developing good sleep hygiene. So like good habits, preparing yourself to go to bed, making your environment very calm, very soothing, make it feel safe, and then also having like some type of ritual or routine. And again, like your brain loves routines, it loves rituals, it's very calming. So getting into like a positive habit can really be soothing. So if you happen to suffer from nightmares, creating a soothing routine to help yourself get back to sleep, that might include like warm tea or warm milk, something warm, very soothing for the body, right? You're thinking about your five senses. So I always encourage doing something with temperature. So I like to be warmer. So I always go for like something like a heating pad or tea or something like that. But if you tend to run hot and you prefer something cold, you could do like iced tea or like an ice pack or something. I don't know. You play with different things, figure out what works. So I'm going to link that article so you can look at about tips for some good sleep hygiene. But the general tips I'm going to give you if you're struggling with nightmares, that's like a kind of an extension to that blog. It's about kind of tracking and to figure out what works, and then you can go ahead and implement these things. So tip number 1 is going to be keeping a dream journal right by your bed. So when you wake up and you have this terrifying nightmare, and you calm yourself with your tea or your ice pack or whatever you feel like using, you can jot down, okay, on this day dream this, and you can make it like little bullet points. It doesn't have to be something sophisticated. You write down like what the dream was about, if you can remember, how you felt when you woke up, maybe how you felt during the dream, and that's it. Like, keep it short and sweet, and you just kind of track it over time. And then this falls into number 2. Like, number 2 is I want you to also keep track of kind of your day. So like maybe daily journaling and just kind of looking at, and again, you can keep it short and sweet, but like, what was your day like? How did you feel? What were your stressors? Looking at those type of things so that you then can look back. You have your dream journal, you have your daily journal, you can look and see maybe there's a pattern to when you start to have nightmares. So maybe if you have and it's very common that when you have a really highly stressed day at work, which again, like, if you get triggered at work for whatever reason and you stuff that stuff down and you don't ever really go back and confront it, then it comes out into your dreams. And so even if your dreams are not specifically related to the trauma, it's the feelings that are associated, right? It's the way that you are feeling and like the unprocessing. Again, you're not allowing yourself to complete the action. You're stuffing it all down, and then it's coming out with your sleep. And tip number 3 that I have is to do something physical. Because it's so important to have this cycle complete, even in the dream state. If you can get up, walk around, maybe do some yoga stretches, just kind of find a way when you have this nightmare, when you wake up from a nightmare, to kind of get that energy out, to release that tension, to give you some relief for the rest of the evening. And then you incorporate the dream, the tracking mechanisms of the journaling and creating a proper sleep hygiene. Some other bonus tips would be prayer or meditation, using your grounding techniques. Now it's your turn. I want to hear from you. Comment down below. Tell me what you think about this video. Are you struggling with nightmares? Are you struggling with intrusive thoughts? Comment down below. Let's have a discussion. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and I will catch you all tomorrow.